that, government keeps on growing. And I want to talk about that point too. First, I'll mention what John Paulson said, the billionaire hedge fund investor. He said if Kamala wins, he's selling $9 billion in assets like that and going to gold and cash because she wants to raise the corporate income tax rate. She wants to go from 20% to 44% on capital gains. And then, let's get the rich. And people say, yeah, well, who cares if he's a billionaire? And we'll impose a 25% unrealized gain, which is really un-American, right? Unrealized gain. Well, if no one cares about the billionaire, what happens when the billionaire yanks every asset he owns from cryptocurrency to common stock to the bond market? They all implode like that because you're yanking all that energy out of the market, and he's just one. It's so stupid. It's too stupid to be stupid. But I want to just bring up one thing about the government, which you mentioned, and I'll just say it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. After last year, we were told that every month that the employment numbers were looking so great, and look at what a great job I'm doing, said Biden, and our job growth has never been stronger. And he keeps saying the same naive bullshit. Well, I will, look at the jobs. Well, yeah, your job numbers will look good when you are starting from a negative number because everyone was locked down and jobs were suspended or canceled. So yes, when the economy reopens, you're going to look good, you idiot.
Those aren't new jobs being created. Those are old jobs.
But not only that, they revised 1 million jobs, 818,000 at the end of the year and over 200,000 during the course of the year. Sorry, we were wrong. They quietly revised them. But this one really pisses me off. So the September job report comes out. Media makes a huge deal about it. They say, what do they say? In September, the U.S. unexpectedly added a whopping 254,000 jobs, the biggest monthly increase since March, higher than average monthly gain of 203 over the past 12 months, which were all revised. But then we find out that really what happened was that we lost 458,000. They're called non-seasonally adjusted jobs. Those are the kids working as in lawn care and at the grocery store, going back to school. So those jobs are gone, right? So, but how did we get the addition? We lost 458,000, but somehow we gained 240,000. You know what they did? This is no bullshit. In September, the number of government workers as tracked by the household survey soared by 785,000 jobs, the biggest monthly surge in government workers on record. And who the hell's paying for all of this? Because the government doesn't have any money. The government has no profit motive. If you have a business, you have a profit motive, you're efficient. You don't give a fuck who's paying. We're paying for these jobs, 785,000 jobs to make the employment numbers look good heading into this election, and it's all fugazi.
And it may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen next month. But then again, we are less than 4 weeks away from the most important election of our lifetimes, and 2 weeks away from the BRICS meeting. Things are going to start to quicken, if you will, accelerate on many levels. And I would say to you all that preparation is paramount. If you accumulate gold and silver, do it with the hopes of never use it. If you do, whether it be an emergency or maybe it be an opportunity, you'll be darn glad you have it. If not, you pass it on to your children or your grandchildren or a church or a family member, knowing that it will always be worth something long after the money in our wallets are hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian as an example of what used to be wealth, what used to be money. Gold and silver will be immutable. And in the year 3000, when my great-great-great-grandchildren are using the money that I passed down throughout the generations, it will still be money. So
we live in a world where people think Bitcoin can be $1 million. Why can't gold be 130,000? Why can't silver be 5,000 or higher? Who knows? I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's not that much more crazy than when I started in this industry and the Dow Jones was 2,100 in 1989 to see it go to 40,000. The first guy that I listened to at a conference in Las Vegas, I was 20 years old, and I was there with my dad, and I'll never forget, the guy was booed off the stage and laughed and swearing at him when he said the Dow would go to 10,000. The one thing I have learned, Sean and Jay, and that is that over 35 years of business in finance, there's one absolute and only one that I can tell you unequivocally. Bull markets go higher than anyone ever thinks possible. You can look at a country like, for example, in this case, a country like Poland, who has now decided to continue to purchase gold. They're already at 420 metric tons. They have more gold now than the EU. And when you talk about what Adam Glapinski, the head of the central bank, said, is that he wants to get it up to as high as 20% of their foreign exchange reserves. And I want to remind people what Adam Glapinski said when asked recently, why is it that you buy gold? And he says, because gold will retain its value even when someone cuts off the power to the global financial system, destroying traditional assets based on electronic accounting records. Now, of course, we don't assume that this will happen, but as the saying goes, forewarned is forearmed. When you hear things like this, it becomes very, very important. We're seeing the breakout of gold in Swiss francs, which is a very important confirmation because especially in terms of other currencies where we've seen gold break out in most currencies, but the Swiss franc has been one of the world's top performing currencies this year and in years past. And a breakout in Swiss francs above moving averages is even more, monumentous. And it is, and it's happening. We're seeing countries like Iran who have increased their gold ownership and purchasing by 6 times this year compared to the same time last year. And there was an interesting article that came out about a hacking group that exposed documents from a company called Tandar Sara. I know I butchered the hell out of that name, but anyways, this company is involved in drone technology, and it's linked to Iran, to their military. And the hacked documents that came out, kind of like a WikiLeaks thing, said that Iran paid $1.75 billion in a deal for drones, and the payment was made with several tons of gold ingots. We're seeing a shift away. We're seeing a movement away from the West, a shift away from treasuries, a shift away from dollars, and a changing of the guard. And, countries are tired of sanctions and the bullying, and they're trying to get out of the way of the West. And they're doing that by purchasing over $1 trillion of gold since 2022 while selling $1 trillion in treasuries. This is a trend that is unmistakable. Rising gold in the midst of a hot war signals problems with the dollar, obviously signals problem with what's going on back home. Ultimately, gold will go higher than anyone thinks possible. I'll give you a better way of looking at it. I did an interview recently with a gentleman who told me, Andy, money creation, by his estimate, for the last 10 years has averaged 7% in the United States. And this is all tied into it because the cost of war is incredibly inflationary, and they will have to print money to fund these wars, to buy munitions, to do all of these things. And according to the World Gold Council, as I mentioned to you, it has historically rallied as much as 10% in the first 6 months after a Fed cut. We now expect gold to reach $2,750 per ounce by the end of 2024 and to $2,900 per ounce by the third quarter of 25. And so that's pretty significant, but not as significant as Goldman Sachs, who is talking about right now in the fourth quarter of 2025, by the end of the third quarter in 2025, $3,000 gold. By the end of the year in 2025, $3,080 an ounce. And this is elevated from $2,700 to $2,900 an ounce. Again, these banks are coming out and saying, we're moving to $3,000 an ounce. And Goldman Sachs has said that they're being inundated with precious metals requests on their trading desks, which is a very, very, very big deal, obviously. And it is being evidenced by the first time in 2.5 years, we see an uptick in ETF holdings. And so as ETF holdings pick up, as the Fed pivots and lowers rates, probably another 50 basis points here in November, this is just rocket fuel for gold, which has done what it's done, again, rallying 29% and 47% since 2022 when we saw this divergence in 2022 where the ETF started to outflow in the U.S. and gold started to go up, really.
And so this 47% gain since 2022, as the public has not been involved in it, with positive real yield and a strong dollar. Now you see dollar kind of hanging right at that 100 mark on the Dixie, and could very well fall from there and drop a little bit, or maybe a lot, of course. And then you see that the yields coming down, and now the ETFs ticking up. This is all huge. And to see Goldman and UBS say these things is again very, very significant. They're acquiescing to the reality that, again, you can only manipulate a market over an extended period of time, done again by pushing it in the direction that it is going. And that is the key, that maybe these banks realize it's as dumb as a mud wall, like Bank of America, to be naked short in a market where the rest of the world is voraciously accumulating metal, to the point where just in the month of August, 8.1% of all the silver held that's available for delivery, and the LBMA was delivered 8.1%, over 25 million ounces in the month of August. So it's accelerating the acquisition of gold. And it's also being done in a manner to not upset the apple cart, as we talked about last week, with 160 metric tons purchased by Saudi Arabia, but not disclosing it the way they're supposed to the IMF, because they don't want to upset the big kahuna, the United States.
My question to you, as someone who is a student of central banks, is, have we reached that moment where the privilege of being the Western rule of law, being the Western system, the Western entity that has ruled the world for 5 centuries, financially, are we getting to the point where the rest of the world says, piss off, I don't want your debt anymore, and you're continuing to choose inflation over austerity the way that all politicians have done forever, that we are moving to a different system, maybe one backed by gold, as Zoltan Pozar calls it, Bretton Woods 3? How close are we to that moment where this hubris, this privilege that we have taken for granted, it's losing your thumb in an accident? God forbid, you never realize how important something is until it's gone. Are we close to losing our thumb